Retro Quickies 1943. Capcom's back at it again with a sequel to their World War II scrolling shooter, and I have to be honest, I don't think I've ever played a game that was both a glow-up and a step backwards like this one. It definitely manages to be more engaging and interesting than the first, but so many of the new systems manage to frustrate more than anything. Once again, you play as a single fighter plane tasked with taking down as many forces of a nondescript evil nation as you can, except this time we're mixing in RPG elements. At the start of the game, you get 3 points to distribute among 5 stats. Attack power if you want to cause more damage, defensive power if you want to lose less energy while being hit, energy if you want to have a larger energy threshold and restore more from items, special weapons which give you access to new weapons when you pick up a power-up, and special weapon time limit, which increases the amount of time you hold on to your special weapon. In what order and how much you upgrade each of these stats has a very tangible effect on gameplay, as enemies become so incredibly aggressive in later levels that not having access to a special weapon, or not having enough energy to survive, is going to be a major bug on your windshield. And yes, that's right, I said energy, because in addition to the stats screen, you're sporting an energy meter that is constantly ticking down during the stage. Getting hit by enemy fire or bodies takes huge chunks out of it, and after hit invincibility is so slim that it's easy to get hit multiple times by the same group if you aren't careful. The good news is that if your energy hits 0, you aren't dead quite yet. Instead, you're on the cusp of death, but you're further punished by having your plane move and shoot slower. This is the type of shooter that really benefits from having a turbo button, as taking out as many enemies as quickly as possible is a big requirement here. However, even with raised attack power, your basic pea shooter isn't actually going to get you very far, as enemies regularly appear in groups and patterns that are difficult to reach across the screen. So that's when you go after those red planes, making their return from the first game. They show up a lot more often this time, and good thing too, because they are pivotal to staying alive, as they drop POW orbs, which will grant you more energy. However, if you shoot it a few times, it'll change shape into a special weapon. Keep shooting it, it'll become a POW orb again, and then the next level of the special weapon, and so on and so forth, based on how much you've upgraded your special weapon until it's done the loop about twice, after which it'll just become a gas tank, which gives more energy than the POW orbs, but can't be changed back. When you grab a special weapon, a timer will start ticking down, letting you know how long it'll stick around for, and you can refill it by grabbing another copy of the special weapon. But if you let the timer run out, you go back to your basic pea shooter, and believe me, having this happen on later stages is like bringing a dollar store squirt gun to a super soaker war. You also have to deal with a boss at the end of each level now too, though it's more like an endurance round. The bosses are usually these giant battleships, and your job is to destroy as much of them as you can before the ship flows by you. If you don't destroy the ship entirely, you still move on, you just don't get as big of a bonus. You also get a screen clearing ability that you can access with a push of a button, and you can use it as much as you want, provided you have the energy for it. It uses up a large chunk of energy, which is essentially, again, your health bar, and if you use it when you're at 0, you only have 3 uses. This also won't hurt bosses, it just stuns them for a little bit of time, which believe me is very, very, very helpful, especially when you're sapped of all your resources and have next to nothing to keep you alive. In addition to the power-ups dropped by the red planes, you can also find other items hidden throughout the levels. They're invisible, and you have to shoot the open air a few times to uncover it. These items are quite frankly pretty random, ranging from bamboo shoots, dragonflies, astronauts, cows, just the weirdest things you could imagine, and will either restore a massive amount of your energy, refill your weapon energy, or give you an extra point or two to permanently increase the stats of your ship. You can imagine that getting these things is really important to making it through the game, so it's a bit of a shame that actually finding these things can be really freaking hard when you're trying to bat back things like this. Now, I've spent a lot of time going over the game's mechanics and how it works this time around, and you're probably thinking, wow, they really fleshed out this shooter to make it much better than the original, and while yes, on paper it all seems hunky-dory, there are a few big issues here. But before we cover them, I'll lead off with another really big positive. The graphics and sounds are much better. The music itself is actually music this time, with several very nice and pleasant tracks, and even a warning track that will start sounding when you're under 20 points of energy. You're going to be hearing that one a lot. The game looks great too, and even has several different environments, starting high in the air and then having you go down close to the water when you're making a run against an enemy battleship. It legitimately looks pretty nice, but it does still kind of have the issue of hiding shots from you, as they can disappear against the background, though you'll more likely lose track of the bullets when you're trying to keep an eye on the enemies flying around. Yeah, I'm not gonna beat around the bush, this game is a lot harder than the previous one, much closer to a proper bullet hell with everything flying at you, and it's also a lot more stingy with its continues. While you still have unlimited continues, you only have one life for each level, and continuing means starting from the beginning of that stage. You also lose any sort of upgrades you might have found during the stage if you die, and you might think that the energy system would keep you from dying quite as often, but with how much stuff is thrown at you, and the fact that if you don't periodically grab energy items, well, you're SOL. There should be an interesting back and forth here, having to plan ahead and consider what you need in the moment, be it weapon or life energy, but in practice, keeping track of resources while you're dealing with trying to hunt down invisible power-ups and keep up with enemy patterns like this, well, it takes a lot more brain power than I'm able to process. The good thing is that the enemy groups always fly at you in the same patterns at the same times, and the hidden objects don't shift each time you play a level, so there is an element of memorization to this. But much like pulling off a mix-up in a fighting game, memorizing what you have to do and actually executing it are two different asks here. It's unfortunate because on paper this game takes the base of the original and not only makes it into something more unique and interesting, as to almost make it seem like it's from a totally different series, but it also speeds up the gameplay and gives you a lot more choices to make in the moment, making stages feel like they zoom by a lot faster. On the flip side, giving us so much to manage at once combined with a lack of mid-stage checkpoints and no additional tries per life means that if you can't execute, or if you do something as arbitrary as put points into the wrong stats too early, you're going to hit a brick wall. And I don't mind saying that the massive shift in difficulty from 42 to 43 really caught me off guard. It's a much more interesting and complex game than its predecessor, but whether or not it's actually better is left to interpretation, and what should have been a big step forward feels like it's walking on a treadmill.